2 weeks ago, I unexpectedly found myself in possession of this journal. A buddy of mine named Jake likes to hit up those storage unit auctions, you know, like the ones on Storage Wars. He buys abandoned units hoping to flip them for a quick buck. Most of the time it's just junk. Broken TVs, old clothes, a couch that smells like cat pee, stuff that nobody wants. But a few weeks ago, Jake won a unit for next to nothing. And it barely had anything in it. A couple of boxes, a weird filing cabinet, this weird chair that looked like something your creepy uncle would own. Not exactly a gold mine. So he's digging through this stuff, trying to see if there's anything worth selling, and he finds this old beat up box. Inside, just a stack of papers, a ring of keys, and this journal. Nothing else. No name on the storage records, no clue who owned it earlier. Just abandoned. Now Jake knows that I'm into weird stuff. Old books, creepy artifacts, anything with a story. So one day when he came to visit, he tossed me the journal and he said, "Here man, this looks like something you'd be into." At first, I thought it was just some random diary, but then I started reading, and that's when things got really strange. Because the guy who wrote this, Ethan, he talks about an apartment building that doesn't exist. He described places and events that shouldn't even be possible. And the deeper I got into this journal, the more I started to feel like maybe this is something that was never meant to be read. So here's what I'm going to do. For the rest of this video, I'm just going to read straight from Ethan's journal. No interruptions, no extra commentary, just his words exactly as he wrote them. So this is the first set of journal entries that Ethan wrote after moving into apartment 517. Hey, I'll be quick. If you're liking this story, can you do me a huge favor and subscribe and leave a like? This is actually just part 1 of 24 parts of this story, so if you want to see the rest, be sure to stick around for more. Thanks, and back to the story. March 3rd. New place, new start. At least, that's what I keep telling myself. I don't really do journaling, but here we are. I read somewhere that writing down your thoughts is supposed to stop you from overthinking, so maybe it'll help me process things. Maybe it'll help with the nights where I lay in bed, unable to sleep, wondering where the hell my life is going. Guess we'll see. Anyway, the apartment's decent. A lot bigger than I expected, a lot cheaper than it should be, but I'm not about to question my luck. The place has a weird layout though, longer than it is wide, like a hallway that somebody decided to turn into an apartment. The kitchen is shoved to one end, the bedroom at the other, and not much room in between. But whatever, I don't need much, it's just me now. Still weird saying that, just me. Not me and Melissa. The breakup was a lot. 4 years together, and now I don't really even know where half of my stuff is. Probably still at her place, or a box in the back of my closet. Haven't really had the energy to deal with that. I don't like living alone, never really have, but I don't really have much of a choice. My old place was hers really. Her name on the deed, her furniture, I just kind of existed there. So when things ended, I packed a couple bags, got on Craigslist, and took the first apartment that I could find. Which honestly, I still don't know how I'm affording this place. Downtown, decent size, rent that doesn't make me want to cry. It's the kind of deal that should have been snatched up within an hour, but there it was, just sitting there. I'd call it fate, but I don't really believe in that kind of thing. All I know is I'm here now, apartment 517. And for better or for worse, it's home. I've already loaded up on groceries for the week. I work from home, so it's not unusual for me to go a week without leaving the house. Unpacking's been slow, mostly because I keep getting distracted. There's something about this place that just feels off. I can't put my finger on it. It's not wrong necessarily. It's just kind of weird, like the proportions don't really make sense. The living room, for one thing, it looks bigger than it should be. When I first saw the apartment listing, I figured it'd be a tight fit. But now that I'm standing in it, it feels roomier, too much space between the couch and the back wall. I even counted my steps just to see if I was imagining things. So either I suck at estimating square footage or something just really isn't adding up. And the walls, God, the walls. They aren't crooked, but they don't really look straight either. There's this weird sensation like they're leaning in ways that they shouldn't. If I stare too long, I get this kind of dizzy feeling like I'm in a carnival funhouse of mirrors. It's probably just my brain playing tricks on me, though. New place, unfamiliar, just gotta adjust, right? Still, it's weird. And then there's the silence. It's supposed to be an apartment building, 5 floors, a dozen or so people living on each floor, but if I didn't know any better, I'd think that I was the only one living here. No footsteps in the hallway, no muffled conversations through the wall, no plumbing noises, no faint crying babies, just nothing. I mean, I guess it's possible that everybody is just out, or the walls are just really well insulated, but I haven't even seen another tenant yet. Not in the elevator, not when I was bringing my boxes up, not in the lobby, nothing. The whole place feels like one of those hotels that are shut down for the season. You know, like in those urban exploration videos? Not gonna lie, it's creeping me out a little bit. But hey, probably just first day jitters. I'll get used to it, right? Okay, I need to stop freaking myself out. This place is fine. It's a little weird, sure, but weird doesn't mean bad. If anything, I should be grateful. I landed a cheap apartment in the middle of the city, and it's actually pretty nice. No mold, no cockroaches, no weird smells. I should be celebrating, not standing here counting steps like a lunatic. I think I'm just on edge. Too much time spent alone with my thoughts. That's why I wanted to start this journal in the first place. Get all this stuff out of my head, written down on paper. So here I am, day 1, in a new place. Fresh start, that's how I need to look at this. New apartments, new habits, new me. That was the plan, right? Move somewhere different, get my life together, be better, because let's face it, I've been a real mess. Between the breakup and work drying up, it's been a rough few months. I need some structure in my life, something to hold me accountable. So I'm making this a thing, a daily journal. Track my progress, set goals, just write down whatever stupid thoughts are bouncing in my skull at the time. And tonight's first goal, stop overthinking every little thing. No more obsessing about the silence, no more measuring the goddamn living room with my feet, no more creeping myself out for no reason. This is a good place, it's a good change, and I'm going to make the most of it. Tomorrow is a new day, and it's going to be better. Well, I just finished writing that last part, and there was a knock at the door. Scared the hell out of me. Not because it was loud or anything, just really unexpected. After hours of dead silence, hearing any kind of sound just seemed wrong. But I got off, shook off the feeling, and went to answer the door. And it was my landlord. I'd only met him once before when I came to sign the lease. An older guy, probably in his late 50s. Balding, kind of guy that looks like he'd been smoking since birth. I didn't really even remember his name. Just checking in, he said, peering into the apartment. His voice had this gravelly, too friendly tone, like he was trying really hard to fit in. Too hard. Just wanted to see how you're settling in, he said. I told him everything was fine. He nodded, then didn't really say anything for a second. He just kind of stood there. I shifted my weight, trying to fill the awkward silence. So, this building seems pretty quiet. I haven't seen any neighbors yet. The way his face barely moved when I said that, not comforting. Oh, you'll get used to it, he said. And then, this is the part that creeped me out. He just smiled. Not a normal, polite smile either. It was this tight, stretched out expression, like he was hiding back a joke that I wouldn't understand. I waited for him to say something else. He didn't, so I cleared my throat. So, any idea who lives next door to me? His smile stayed exactly the same. This is a good building. Okay, not at all what I asked. But before I could ask anything else, he clapped me on the shoulder like we were old friends or something and said, "You let me know if you need anything, right?" And then he left. Didn't even wait for me to respond, just kind of turned and walked down the hallway as if the conversation went exactly how he wanted it to. Now I'm sitting here trying to tell myself that that was not a weird encounter, that he isn't weird, that I'm just on edge because I'm moving in and my brain is finding reasons to be creeped out by random stuff. I mean, seriously, who cares if the landlord is a little weird? Maybe he's just socially awkward or something. Maybe I'm reading into stuff too much. I'm probably just tired. Yeah, that's probably it. I'm just tired. After the landlord left, I figured I should do some unpacking. at least pretend to be a little bit productive. So I grabbed my bag from the couch and put it on the kitchen counter and dumped it out. My phone charger, some loose change, and also the set of keys that the landlord had given me when I moved in. There were 4 in total, one for the apartment door, one for the mailbox, one for the building entrance, and I held up a 4th key. It was different from all of the others. Smaller, old looking, made of brass with no markings on it. I frowned and turned towards the nearest lock, the apartment door. So I put the key in and tried it. Nothing. I tried the bathroom door, didn't fit. Kitchen cabinets, nope. Okay, that's weird. Maybe it belonged to something outside, like a storage locker or a utility room. I made a mental note to ask the landlord about it later, but something gave me the impression that he'd just flash me the same weird smile and just avoid answering the question. So I tossed the key on the counter and turned my attention back to unpacking. Opened a few more cupboards, put away some dishes, and then I moved on to the cabinets. That's when I found it. Tucked away in the farthest corner of the highest shelf, there was a small wooden box. Light-colored wood, smooth to the touch, no lock or latch, just a sliding lid. I hesitated for a minute. It wasn't mine. Probably something forgotten by the last tenant, but still, curiosity got the better of me. I pulled it down, set it on the counter, and slid the lid open. Inside was a single scrap of paper. Yellow, curled at the edges. I unfolded it. There were 5 words on it, scrawled in shaky, tight handwriting. "You made a mistake." I stared at it for way too long. Then, slowly, I exhaled out my nose and gave out a little laugh because, come on, that's stupid. Some random old note, probably somebody's dumb prank. Or maybe the last guy kind of wrote it as a joke for himself before he left. Like a reminder not to rent cheap apartments off of Craigslist or something. So I crumpled it up and I threw it in the trash. Then I closed the cabinet, dusted my hands off, and just told myself I wasn't going to think about it anymore. By the time I finished unpacking, it was late, and my stomach was reminding me that I hadn't eaten since the morning. So I grabbed my phone and pulled up my favorite food delivery app. Pizza seemed like the safest bet, cheap, reliable, pretty hard to mess up. So I punched in my new address, added a pepperoni pizza to my cart, and hit order. 15 minutes later, my phone rang. Hello? Static crackled on the other end. Then a voice, male, confused. Yeah, is this the guy that ordered a pizza? Yeah? The driver hesitated. I think you put in the wrong address. I said, no I didn't. He said, I'm at the spot the GPS says, but there's nothing here. It's just a big empty lot. I pulled up my app and double-checked the information. Apartment 517 on Mornington. Same address I'd given the landlord. Same address that was printed on my lease. I live in an apartment building, I said. Big brown brick complex, 5 stories, kinda ugly. The guy said, yeah, I don't see anything like that around here. There was a weird, uncomfortable silence that just kind of stretched between us at that point. Then after a while, he sighed and said, hang on, I'll just keep looking. I waited by the window. Watching the streets below. 10 minutes passed, and then another 5. Finally, a set of headlights slowed down in front of the building. I grabbed some cash, opened the door, and stepped into the hallway just as somebody knocked. The guy standing there in front of me looked a bit off. Late 20s, maybe early 30s, messy hair, tired eyes, wearing a jacket that looked too warm for the weather. He held the pizza box out, arms stiff like he didn't want to get too close to me. Sorry about that, I said, offering up the cash. Just a weird mix-up, I guess. He took the money without even counting it. Didn't even look at me. Yeah, he muttered, weird. Then, before I could say anything else, he just turned and walked away. Fast. Like he couldn't get out of there quick enough. I stood there for a second, watching him disappear down the hall, and then I kind of shook my head, stepped back inside the apartment, and closed the door. Whatever, I was starving. At least the pizza smelled normal. I ate in front of my laptop like usual, scrolling mindlessly as I chewed. The pizza was fine, hot, greasy, exactly what I needed. The weirdness of the driver was already fading in my mind. A mix-up, probably just a glitch in his GPS, nothing more. At least, that's what I told myself. After I finished, I tossed the empty box on the kitchen counter and headed for the bedroom. I was exhausted. But I wanted to do one last thing before I headed to bed. Check out the view out my window. 5th floor, should be able to see a pretty good stretch of the city. I pulled the curtain back and I was shocked. Instead of streets and buildings, I looked down into an alley. Narrow, empty, running between my building and... what? I squinted. I hadn't noticed another structure this close earlier. No signs, no lights, just a blank concrete wall going up into the darkness. Weird. I pulled up my phone and opened Google Maps, switching to satellite view. I zoomed in. My building was there, right where it should be. But that alley wasn't. Where it should have been, the map showed a row of trees in a parking lot. No sign of the blank wall across from me either. Just open space. That didn't make sense. So I refreshed the app. Same thing. I stepped closer to the window and I pressed my forehead against the glass. The alley was real. I was looking right at it. So why wasn't it on the map? I exhaled, rubbing my eyes. Glitches happen, maps can be outdated. Maybe the city built something new. Maybe Google just hadn't updated their imagery yet. Maybe I was just too damn tired to think straight. I let the curtain fall back into place, shaking my head. I needed some sleep. Everything would make more sense in the morning. I barely remember falling asleep, but I must have been out cold because next thing I knew, my alarm clock was blaring and sun was shining in through the curtains. Morning, new day, fresh start. I shook off the grogginess, made some coffee, and pulled my laptop out of my bag. If I wanted to get any real work done today, I needed to set up my Wi-Fi. Sat at the tiny kitchen table, router plugged in, waiting for the process to finish. A list of available networks popped up on my screen. There was Network 5G, Apartment 517, which was mine, and then one called Help Me 517. I froze, that last one. Help Me 517. Was it just a joke? Maybe somebody on this floor had a weird sense of humor and this was their way of hazing the new tenant. I stared at the list for a few seconds later, my finger hovering over the mouse trackpad. Then, on impulse, I refreshed the page. Gone. The network just disappeared. I swallowed hard, clicked again. Still nothing, it was just gone. My chest tightened, my brain tried to rationalize. Maybe I imagined it, a trick of the eyes or a glitch. Some random network flickering in and out before my network could completely adjust. Yeah, that had to be it, so I refreshed again. Still just the same two networks, Netgear 5G and my own. I sat back in my chair, rubbing my face. Get a grip, Ethan. It was nothing. The alley, the weird delivery driver, the Wi-Fi thing. It was all just me overthinking. I'd moved to a new place, and my brain was just looking for stuff to fixate on. So I closed my laptop, took a few sips of coffee and a deep breath. I wasn't going to let this place get to me, at least not today. But something in my mind just couldn't let go of it. Wi-Fi was nothing, I told myself over and over, but it's like my body just wasn't believing it. There was this tight, nagging feeling in my chest, like I just needed to get out of this place. Not permanently, not packing my bags and breaking my lease go. Just out, away, somewhere else for the night. Maybe a hotel, maybe a friend's couch. Even just crashing in my car in the parking lot seemed better than staying here. The thought sat heavy in my mind. So simple and obvious that I didn't really question it at first. I just needed to grab my keys, my wallet, but then I stopped. Because no, this was stupid. I wanted this place. I needed this place. It was my fresh start. If I let my own paranoia drive me out of this place on the second day, what the hell does that say about me? I wasn't that guy. I wasn't somebody that just ran off when something didn't feel right. So I forced myself to sit down, take a deep breath and another sip of coffee. I stared at my table, my laptop, the router blinking beside it. Everything looked normal. My apartment was normal. The Wi-Fi was probably just some dumb glitch. The alley was probably just an outdated map. And that delivery driver probably just hated his job. And the silence in the building, the landlord's weirdness, this obscure feeling that something was just wrong. That was me, not the apartment, just me. I rubbed the back of my neck and let out a soft breath. I was staying. I had to. This is my place now. I just needed to get some rest. I was letting the thoughts run away with me, this weird, creeping paranoia. And that just wasn't going to help. I'd been alone too much lately, just letting myself spiral about random things. The whole point of this move was to start fresh, to be better, to try something new. So I forced normalcy. I put on some music, something light, easygoing, kind of playlist that I'd throw on if I was just cooking or cleaning, something that made the apartment feel lived in. Then I got up, stretched, made another cup of coffee. The smell of it really helped, warm and familiar. I let the routine ground me, anchoring me back to something real. Then I sat back down at the desk and opened my journal, the one I'd bought specifically for this move. A fresh start, clean pages, no baggage. So I flipped to the next blank page and started writing. Day 1. Okay, so I'll admit I was a little on edge tonight. Moving to a new place is always an adjustment, and I think I just let my mind get the better of me. The apartment is quiet, and that's a good thing. No noisy neighbors, no street sounds blaring down below. Just peace. The layout feels a little weird, but whatever, I'll get used to it. Every place has its quirks, but I'm sure by next week I won't even notice it. I think I'm gonna like it here. I stared at those last words for a while. I think I'm gonna like it here. Slowly, I let out a breath and I closed the journal. I didn't sleep great. The apartment was too quiet. I kept waking up, not sure what had stirred me, but the room was always still. Just my own mind playing tricks on me. I keep telling myself that. Still, by morning, I was eager to start fresh. New day, new mindset. I made coffee, sat down on the desk, and flipped my journal open to last night's entry. I wasn't even sure why. I just wanted to remind myself that I had ended the night on a positive note. But for some reason, the words weren't exactly how I remembered them. At first, I thought I'd just written sloppily. Maybe I'd been more tired than I realized. But as I read over the entry, a strange unease settled in my stomach. The structure was right. The sentences were familiar. But some of the words weren't mine. I ran my finger down the page, reading aloud under my breath. Okay, I'll admit I'm a little on edge tonight. Moving to a new place is always an adjustment. And I think I let my mind get the better of me. The apartment is quiet, but that's a bad thing. No noisy neighbors. No constant street sounds blaring through the walls. Just waiting. The layout still feels a little weird. But whatever, I'll get used to it. Every place has its secrets. I'm sure by next week, I won't be here. I think someone is watching. I held my breath. That wasn't what I wrote. That was not what I wrote. I flipped back a few pages, running my thumb along the paper, feeling the texture of the ink. It looked the same as my handwriting. No smudging, no indication that it had been tampered with, but those words were not mine. A cold sensation crept up my spine. I told myself that I must have written it. Maybe I'd been half asleep, messing around without remembering. Maybe I'd written one version in my head and something else entirely different on paper, but it didn't feel like that was the answer. I closed the journal, pressing my palm on the cover, trying to steady my breathing. I let out a slow breath. I was overthinking this. That had to be it. I'd been totally exhausted last night, running on nothing but stress and nerves. Maybe I did write those words and I just didn't remember it. Maybe my brain blurred the lines between what I meant to write and what I actually put down on the page. It wasn't like my own handwriting was unfamiliar to me. I exhaled, shaking my head. God, I need sleep. To prove to myself that I was just being paranoid, I flipped through the rest of the journal. Everything looked normal. Then I noticed something that stopped me cold. The page near the back of the journal was filled with writing. My handwriting. I didn't remember writing it. At first, I thought maybe it was just an old note that I'd forgotten about, but then I noticed the date at the top of the page. 3 days from now. In the future. My stomach twisted. I had not written this, I was sure of that. The ink looked fresh, like it had been written last night, or sometime recently. I ran my fingers over the words, slightly indented from the pen. This wasn't some faint, half-faded note from a month ago. And then I read the message. Don't go into the hallway when the lights flicker. I stared at it, unblinking. A chill spread throughout my chest, settling deeply in my ribs. What the hell was this? I swallowed and flipped to the next page, seeing what was in the rest of the journal, but the rest of the pages were blank. No other warnings, no explanations, just that single unsettling sentence. I forced myself to breathe, think rationally. Maybe I had written it, maybe I was sleepwalking and it was some weird half-asleep note that I left. Maybe I had been dreaming and thought it was something important. Or maybe this was some elaborate prank. Though I had no idea who would be messing with me or who would be able to get into my apartment. Either way, the rational thing to do at this point was just to ignore it. It wasn't real, it didn't mean anything, but I couldn't shake the feeling that somehow it did. I sat there for a long time, staring at the entry. My thoughts were a jumbled mess of rationalizations and disbelief. What was happening to me? I could feel my mind spinning, trying to connect the dots that I didn't understand. Was I losing my grip on reality? Thought back to everything that I'd seen in the last couple of days. All the oddities, the weird things that just didn't seem to add up. Like the strange angles of the apartment and the router name that I'd seen earlier. But no, I couldn't be imagining all of it. But I had to be. I rubbed my eyes and leaned back, taking a deep breath. Was I gonna let this mess with me? The thought of writing it all down, chronicling every weird little occurrence, almost felt ridiculous. But then again, maybe I needed to. Maybe writing all of this down could help me piece it all together. I glanced at the journal again. The warning from the future still stared back at me, like it was daring me to do something. I couldn't just ignore it. I'd been dismissing things as random flukes, small glitches in the system, but now it felt like I was on the verge of something I didn't fully understand. And if I didn't document this, who would? But at the same time, I needed to remind myself that most likely this was all my imagination, just my mind playing tricks on me. I had to stay grounded, didn't I? So I grabbed the pen and I turned to a blank page. I needed to take control. This was my life, my space, and I couldn't let whatever strange stuff was happening here shake me. I wasn't going to let it win, so I started writing. I wrote down the strange moment I'd had with the journal earlier. I wrote about the odd, distant delivery driver. I even wrote about the weird way that the building felt off, how I just could have sworn that I saw things out of the corner of my eye, stuff like that. I wrote it all down. And as I did, I told myself, it's just my imagination. There had to be a rational explanation for all of this. There always is. I convinced myself that writing it down was just a way to keep track of my thoughts, a way to maintain some kind of order. I'd keep my mind clear that way. Everything was fine. I just needed to talk to someone, anyone who could shed some light on what was going on around here. I figured a conversation with my neighbor might ground me, give me some reassurance that I wasn't just spiraling into madness. It would feel good to take action for once, even if it was something as simple as reaching out to a neighbor. So I chose the apartment next to mine. I'd seen someone through the peephole the other day, but when I knocked this time, there was no answer. I knocked again, a little louder this time. Still nothing. I stood there for a moment, just listening to the silence, trying to gauge if anyone was in there. It felt odd, the silence pressing on me from all sides. I stepped back and looked down the hallway, nobody in sight. The hair on my back stood up as I stood there for some reason. Feeling of being watched swept over me. But I shook it off. I couldn't let that feeling take over me. I looked at the door one more time before finally deciding to leave a note. Maybe they were just busy or out for the day. It was worth a try. I scribbled a simple message, something friendly but not too evasive. Hey, I just moved in next door. If you get a chance, I'd love to chat sometime. Nothing too crazy, just an invitation for a conversation. I slipped the note partway under the door and turned to walk back to my apartment, trying to stay focused on the task at hand. I just had to push through this weird, uneasy feeling. But as I walked down the hallway, I felt an odd pull back to go and check on the note. I don't know why, but I did. And when I reached the door again, the note was gone. I stared at the empty space for a moment, confusion sweeping over me. I'd only slipped it under the door a minute before. Had they just taken it already? I hesitated. I knew there was no way that it could have just blown away. Not in the hallway. It was flat floor and perfectly tucked under the door. So I stood there, my heart pounding in my chest. What was going on here? I walked away slowly, but the nagging lingered. Someone had taken that note, and no one had answered the door. The feeling of isolation only deepened. Something about this place, something about the people in it, it just all felt wrong. That night, I tried to push everything out of my mind. The note, the strange feeling in the hallway, the journal entry that had no business being there. I told myself I was letting my imagination get the better of me. There was this new apartment, an unfamiliar place. My brain was looking for patterns, explanations where none is needed. So I put some music on, not loud enough to be obnoxious, just enough to fill the quiet space. It helped a little. I kept my hands busy scrolling through job postings I wasn't really interested in, sipping on a cup of coffee that I didn't really want, anything to keep my mind occupied. Eventually, I forced myself to turn in for the night. I didn't feel tired, not really, but laying down and closing my eyes felt like an obligation, something that I had to do just to maintain the illusion of normalcy. I don't know how long I laid there, staring at the ceiling before I heard it. A faint knock. I held my breath, listening. Silence. I exhaled slowly, rolling onto my side, willing myself to ignore it. Probably just the building settling, old pipes shifting as the temperature dropped outside, and then another knock, knock, knock. It wasn't coming from the door, it wasn't coming from the window, it was coming from inside the walls. I sat up slightly, my heartbeat picking up. I strained to hear it again, waiting for another round of knocking, but everything had gone still. Pipes. It had to be the pipes. I flopped back against the pillows and let out a breath. I was being ridiculous. This was an old building. Buildings make noise. My last apartment had weird sounds too. Floorboards creaking when nobody was walking on them, radiators clanking in the middle of the night. So I closed my eyes, trying to let go, but a few minutes later, just as I was drifting off, I swear I heard it again. Faint, almost hesitant, right behind my headboard. I gritted my teeth, forcing my body to stay still, but I wasn't going to let this place get to me. It was pipes. It was just the pipes. I told myself that again and again, until at some point, I finally just fell asleep. I woke up with a start, my heart hammering in my chest before I even knew why. The room was dark, silent, my mouth was dry, my skin prickling with a cold sweat that comes from a bad dream. But I couldn't remember dreaming at all, just that awful sinking feeling when I woke up, that something was wrong. I turned my head towards the alarm clock on my nightstand. 3:33 a.m. Something about those numbers sent a chill down my spine. Too precise, too deliberate, like I was supposed to wake up at this exact time. And then I felt it. A prickling, suffocating sensation of being watched. My breath caught in my throat. I lay there frozen, my senses on high alert. The feeling was overwhelming, crawling over my skin like static electricity. Every instinct in my body was screaming at me not to look, to just close my eyes and go back to sleep, but I knew I wouldn't be able to. Not until I convinced myself that nothing was there. Slowly, I pushed myself up onto my elbows. The first thing I noticed was the door. it was closed. That did not make sense because I always kept it open. The apartment was small, just a one bedroom with an open layout, and keeping the door ajar made it feel less cramped, more breathable. I hadn't closed it before going to bed, I was sure of that. I swallowed hard, staring at it. The knob was just barely visible in the dim glow of the streetlights filtering in through my window. I tried to tell myself that maybe I just forgotten. Maybe I got up in the night to use the bathroom and just shut it on the way back without remembering. But I knew that wasn't true, because as I sat there, barely breathing, I could see something else. The bottom of the door. Tiny gap between it and the floor, and the shadow that wasn't there before. I didn't move. The shadow under my door didn't move either. I held my breath, my mind racing through every possible explanation. Maybe it was just a trick of the light, maybe I'd left something in the hallway, and it was casting a weird shape in the dark. Maybe. And all of a sudden the shadow lifted. Not much. Just enough. I scrambled upright in the bed, my pulse hammering in my ears. My first instinct was to grab something, anything, but my apartment was practically empty. My phone was on the nightstand, my heaviest book was a paperweight, and the only real weapon I had was my own fear. I forced myself to get out of bed and take a step forward, and then another. The floor was cold under my feet as I approached the door. Every nerve in my body screamed at me to stop, turn around and hide under the blankets like a child. But I couldn't. I had to know. So I reached out. Slowly, I gripped the doorknob, my fingers slick with sweat. I held my breath as I turned it inch by inch, and then I yanked the door open. Nothing. My apartment was empty. I exhaled sharply, my body sagging with the release of tension. Maybe I'd imagined it, maybe I'd been half asleep, caught in one of those weird liminal states where dream blends into reality. Either way, I needed to get out of here, so I grabbed my keys, slipped on my shoes, and decided on a late night walk to clear my head. Stupid idea probably at 3 in the morning, but this apartment felt suffocating. The walls were too close, the air was too still, so I went out in the hallway and I pressed the elevator button. Nothing happened. I pressed it again. The numbers above the door didn't change, no hum of machinery, no ding, just silence. I glanced towards the stairwell instead. The door was slightly ajar to the stairs, just enough to see the first few steps leading down, but something about that felt off like the rest of this place. The light inside was dimmer than it should have been, flickering faintly, like a dying light bulb struggling to stay alive. I hesitated. The earlier message in my journal flooded back into my mind. Don't go into the hallway when the lights flicker. The idea of stepping out into that darkness sent a shiver down my spine. So I turned back to my apartment. Maybe all of this could wait until morning. I woke up feeling like I hadn't slept at all. My body ached, my head was heavy, my mouth was dry like I'd spent the night grinding my teeth. I blinked up at the ceiling, trying to remember if I had any dreams. If I'd woken up in the middle of the night again, nothing came to mind. Just a lingering sense of exhaustion, like something had been pressing down on me in my sleep. I rolled over groaning, and that's when I saw it. My front door was open. Not wide open, just slightly ajar. A sliver of the hallway light was visible in the gap, a thin slice of light cutting across the floor, but a rush of cold prickled up my spine. I sat up slowly, my heart already pounding. I knew that I had locked that door. I was sure of it. After the weirdness of last night, the shadow, the elevator, the stairwell, I definitely checked. I always check the door. I swung my legs over the side of the bed, forcing myself to stand. The air in the apartment felt off, thicker somehow, like stepping into the room where somebody had just been, where the presence still clung to the walls. Then I saw the note. It was laying just inside the doorway on the floor, the same note that I had slipped under my neighbor's door yesterday, except the handwriting wasn't mine. I picked it up with shaking fingers. The paper was the same, the fold was the same, but the words, the ones that I had written, were gone. The message I had scrawled asking if anyone noticed the strange happenings was missing. Instead, there was something else, a single sentence, written in uneven, jagged strokes. You should not have written anything. I dropped the note. The air in the apartment felt suffocating now, thick and heavy with something unseen. My skin crawled, my heartbeat hammered in my ears. I turned back to the door, intending to slam it shut, but before I could move, a soft creak echoed from the hallway. Someone was out there, watching. My hands were shaking as I shut the door. This time, I turned the lock, then the deadbolt. I even pulled the handle twice to make sure it was secure. The hallway outside was quiet again, but I wasn't about to take any chances. I needed to sit down to think. The note was still on the floor, its jagged warning staring back at me. You shouldn't have written anything. I swallowed hard and backed away from it, my mind racing. I needed to check the journal. I grabbed it from the desk, flipping frantically through the pages until I found it. The entry dated 3 days from now. The same one I'd seen last night. Don't go into the hallway when the lights flicker. It was still there, the same words, the same eerie, impossible message. But now, something had been added to it. Right below the original warning, another sentence appeared in the same thin, spidery handwriting. You shouldn't have stayed. I stared at it, my breath caught in my throat. Cold, sick feeling settled in my stomach. I ran my fingers over the words, as if I could somehow smudge them away, prove to myself that I was just seeing things. But the ink was real, and the warning was real, and it was addressed to me. I snapped the journal shut and pressed my palm to my forehead, trying to steady my breathing. What the hell is happening? Someone messing with me, breaking into my apartments, planting these notes, writing in my journal when I slept? But how and why? Or worse, was I losing my mind? I needed to get out of here. I needed fresh air, a distraction, something to clear my mind. But even as I thought it, I found myself glancing back at the door. I could still hear that creak from the hallway replaying in my mind. Someone had been out there. Someone. Or something. I forced myself to go about my morning as if everything were normal. I made coffee, I checked my phone, I scrolled through the news, but everything felt wrong. The air in my apartment was heavier than before, thick with something I couldn't name. Every sound made me jump. Water pipes groaning, the hum of the fridge, even the quiet tick of the clock on my wall. And the worst part, I couldn't shake that feeling that I was being watched. It was absurd, completely irrational, but it was there, prickling the back of my neck and itching my brain that no amount of logic could scratch away. I tried to ignore it. I tried to act like nothing had changed, but it had. I caught myself glancing at the journal every few minutes, half expecting another message to appear when I wasn't looking. I double-checked the locks on my doors, then I triple-checked them. When I stepped into the bathroom to splash cold water on my face, I hesitated before looking in the mirror. What was I afraid of seeing? I laughed under my breath. This is ridiculous. I need to stop. I need to get a grip. Still, as I moved through my apartment, I found myself avoiding certain places, like standing too close to the door, lingering by the windows. And that hallway outside, I didn't even want to think about that. I caught my reflection in the dark screen of my TV, tired eyes, clenched jaw. I looked like a man that was slowly unraveling. Maybe I was. I've never locked my bedroom door before. Not in this apartment, not in any place where I'd lived. There was never a reason to, but tonight, as I stood in the doorway, staring into the dimly lit room, something in my gut just told me to slide the lock into place, just in case. I sat on the edge of my bed slowly. My phone was already plugged in for the night, screen glowing faintly with time. It was late. I should be sleeping already. Instead, I opened the journal. Alright, I think that's enough for paranoia for today. That's what I'll tell myself. That's what I'll write, just to make it real. Nothing really happened today. Just another weird morning. Probably imagined half of it. I'm too tired to think straight anymore. I need to chill out, maybe watch something dumb before bed, clear my head. Maybe I just need a full night's sleep for once. That would be nice. I tapped the end of the pen against the page, staring at the words. They didn't feel real. That didn't even sound like me. It's just something to fill the space, something to convince myself that this is all normal. I ran a hand down my face with a laugh under my breath. It's all so stupid. I'm letting a building get inside my head. It's just old building. It's just old plumbing and weird neighbors and not getting enough sleep. That's it. So I flipped the journal shut and stopped. There, On that last page, right near my latest entry, there was a faint smudge, a single fingerprint, and I froze. Because I knew I haven't touched the page like that. My own fingers are clean, free of ink or oil, and yet there it is. Just one small smudged print, like someone or something pressed a fingertip into the page while I wasn't looking. Chills spread through me. I stared at it for a long time, too long, and then, very slowly, I picked up my pen again. Beneath my last sentence, I wrote, "The knocking inside the walls is starting again."